Hi, good morning. I'm so excited today. I have my friend with me. His name is Sourabh Gupta. He is a multi-disciplinary artist. He's a sculptor, a designer. He can make magic out of nothing like I've never seen. Um, he's one of the most inspirational people I've ever met. His work has been at the Met Gala. He's sold at Bergdorf Goodman. He's been featured in the New York Times. He grew up in a house with no windows. And I have to say, well, it's been a long road from a house with no windows to the houses of Haute Couture in New York City, but he has certainly traveled it in record time. And today's episode is called The Art of Life. When you can't see out, look within. So I am delighted to welcome Sourabh Gupta to the show today. Sourabh, are you there?
Hi, Alan.
Hello.
Good morning, and thanks for a wonderful introduction. Thank you so
Oh,
much for that. I'm
I am
here.
so happy that you are here.
Thank
So
you.
you're at your studio, right?
Yes, I am indeed.
In Brooklyn?
Yes, it's in Brooklyn, Gowanus, upcoming Gowanus.
Fantastic. Well, it looks very tidy for a studio, I have to say. You're looking.
Well, I have to thank you guys for giving me the motivation. I use these opportunities to organize myself again and again.
Well, I'm thrilled you're here. Thanks for joining.
Nice.
Let's get into it because you've got such a story, and I think I think when I met you a few years ago, we'd been talking for about 30 minutes, and I was like, oh my God, this guy is just incredible, and uh, I have to find a way to work with him. And so you and I have been doing some work over the last few months, which has been awesome. And so thank you for that. Um, but you've got such an incredible story, which I know to you did not has not necessarily felt incredible. You don't feel incredible in your own life, right? But tell us your story, how you ended up here, how it all began, because you do the most incredible work, Saurabh, and I know that people are going to want to hear how that all came about.
All right. Thank you, Alan, for this opportunity. So I was born in a very small town in India, in Jammu and Kashmir. I mean, I'm the youngest of three brothers, so I think growing up as well, I just felt, aloof from other children. It could be a very protective family environment or many other things. But there was something always in me is to look and observe and try to understand it by sketching, by drawing, by creating 3D models of them. So since the town, even today, you won't find the art supplies necessarily. Like the best you can find is a pencil with HB, and that's an achievement. And then you find a razor blade from your dad's shaving kit to sharpen the pencil. But at the time I did not know any better, so I thought I had the best access to the tools, whatever. But that kind of absence of resources pushed me to seek more, try to see if this is a fork, which we did not have, by the way, spoons, yes. How else could you use it? Because if you want to splatter a painting, if you want to apply a texture, forget about anything. So that actually began another journey within itself. Okay, long story short, then I think I was making art ever since I was a child. I was finding opportunities in the school to write on the bulletin board, or if any festival was happening at the school, I would love to create posters and banners. And so those were my moments of expression of art, I will say, because there was no artist in the town, there is no access to TV at the time, there is no internet. So art was was around you, or what you saw in the church, because that to me was the pinnacle of good art at the time, because there is no other things I had seen. So I just started understanding them and expressing them in those mediums, whatever I found around. Does
I
that?
mean, I remember. Yeah, I remember you saying to me, look, if I wanted something, I just had to make it.
Yeah, I mean, school shoes, you get one pair and you have to drag them for years. So if it tore or broke, you have to fix it or make yourself. So, you know, I think that kind of fostered this curiosity of looking, like, if this is one material, it has so much potential, and people in that region make do that without knowing that this is actually ingenious in many different ways.
And that's the Jugaad. Is that, did I pronounce that right?
Exactly, and
Ju-
that's actually exists at the core of many Indians, not just me. But I guess you can tilt it in different directions. In some cases, you can, try to be resourceful in making art when you don't have the supplies.
So can you just explain the term Jugaad for anyone who doesn't has never heard it before?
Yeah, I think the simplest definition would be the makeshift approach. Even it's now actually in the dictionary now, so it will be defined as, like, if you had, let's say, one room, two rooms to cool, and you only have one air conditioner. The jugaad way of doing that, you'll have a pair of trousers and you will put it in front of the air conditioner, have it split into two rooms. As simple as that. And if you were clever, you would plaster the pants so that it can actually be structurally strong and doesn't let go of exhaust of the heat, of the cool, in that case.
Got it. So pretty much every college student has done this in some way. So,
Yeah, I think making clothes and iron, all those are forms of jugaad, but
right.
Indians have a tendency to take it to a next level.
I love that. There's a brilliant story. If you wouldn't mind telling everyone, there's a brilliant story that you have. And by the way, I just want to say we've got folks chiming in the comments. So I know you can see the comments coming in. So hi, Karen. Good morning. I'm so happy. Karen is a great friend of the show. She's been a guest here. So Karen, good morning. Thanks for joining us. Peter's here. Hi, Peter. Peter runs a excellent startup called Fundraise Up and is going to be a guest. I just told you that, Peter, for the first time. I know that. But so please chime in and send us your questions. Saurabh would be happy to answer them. We'd love to hear from you. So, Saurabh, there's a
Yeah,
great story about a bike wheel. You have to tell this story about the bike wheel.
I think uh, I was very hungry, and I do think that as a child, I missed having somebody to tell me more about art, or in general, more about other things in life than just the things we do at school, which is usually for us very academically focused. So I would use any little inspiration. If I saw a banner or a poster and had a picture of a potter's wheel, I did not know at the time what pottery really is. I saw the parts and to carry the water. They were just made in a factory. I didn't know who made them. So this was first time, I think I was in the third or the fourth grade. We had this black and white TV with this potter's wheel advertisement from the government. I think they were talking about farmers and artisans, how to support them better. And I saw this very little glimpse of somebody making something on a wheel, and I could figure it out. Like, it's some sort of clay-like material that's being formed with water. But my access to clay was the backyard clay. I had never known that there was something else, but there was a material that I was aware of, which was plaster of Paris. And since the potter's wheel material looked like white, I thought it was plaster of Paris. I was so sure. So I ran to the store, got a bag of plaster of Paris, and I'm so jazzed up. It's like, I'm gonna make this beautiful pottery, whatever those things were to me at the time. But now I don't have a wheel. So I think, this is how my brain works. If I want to solve a problem, somehow I'm able to connect things that might not necessarily be obvious to my mother or dad, but I would think that this will be a good way to try. So I had this old rusted bicycle of my brother in the backyard, and I fixed it by applying a plywood to the back of the wheel, and I paid my pocket money for a week to my cousin to turn the wheel so that the back rear wheel turns while he's turning the paddles. And I think I tried to make pottery on top of that with plaster of Paris, which was a disaster. The plaster of Paris went flying around the house and the backyard. But I knew that it was me who was doing it wrong. It was not the materials, it was not the technique, it was my skill level. So I returned to it every day after coming back from school, but it was a disaster after disaster for many days.
How long did it take
I
for you
think
to?
so. Then I learned other. Indians are resourceful. They don't like to waste materials. One, we don't have access to it, and supplies are expensive. So I learned how else could I manipulate plaster of Paris by delaying its time by adding cornstarch or anything. So I gave that a try. When that didn't work, I just started making sculptures out of it instead. But after a number of years, you know, then I finally got to the wheel itself and just had the skill to build some pottery that I thought was beautiful.
So what what was it? Were you aware of being different? Were you different? I mean, this is a you're talking about Jugaad as being a sort of a an Indian sensibility, a way of being in the world, right? And that resourcefulness. But it seems like you had something else. I mean, you know, for you to be able to create what you have created in the world. Um, I mean, if we just, I'm just going to add something to the screen here, Saurabh, and maybe you can just kind of, I mean, people, look at this. Tell us about what we're looking at, Saurabh.
So these are paper botanicals, and I am trained as an architect and a landscape designer. And then I went to Parsons for my interior design, but for some reasons I had to drop it earlier than I wanted. And I was living in Harlem. you know, I did not have any money and tools, and I was very new to the country, but this making urge is very strong. So there was not many, windows in the apartment. Again, I had converted this living room into my studio with one window. So gardening was a passion ever since. So with some paper and glue, I thought I could at least make some attempt in flowers, and that's how it started. And then it became many things from there. But what you're looking at is like dyed paper formed into these botanicals. All of that is paper. Yeah.
All of that is paper.
Yeah.
Everything
Except
that
for
we're
the
looking at
yeah.
is paper. How do you get it to stand up like that?
Or sometimes it's also the straws. So it's multiple materials. Like there is no fixed technique or anything. Whatever I think would be useful and whatever I feel like would be relevant, I use that material.
So, how did you figure out how to make these? Was this just innate?
That is also which I cannot understand about my own brain. I mean, I have worked with different materials and I did not find that, oh, it's so hard. Somehow, something, I mean, I observe more than I know. So when I get to my work table, I somehow feel like I know how to do it. And this was also because, like, when I was going to school every day as a child, there was a cobbler under the tree who I would stop by on my way back from school, and that was to me the most best treat of my day. Like to stop by at the cobbler, collect some wasted nails from him, and there were shoe polish tins that he would give me, empty ones that I would flatten and think that these are my toys. So, but just stopping by there for a few minutes every day, you know, I didn't know what I was doing. But years later, when I was in Nepal and I found these scraps of leather, and it was the earthquake relief time, and I had in the evenings, but I was starting working with leather, and I realized how I had learned all those techniques without actually thinking that I am learning it. Just by sitting there, I had almost learned how to cross stitch, how to fishbone stitch, all of that. And just when I started doing my piece, I could finish it thinking that I knew how to do it. And I still have that piece here at the studio, and it's been years, 20 years or more. Not 20, but
So,
I think 15 years.
wow. So, in the early years when you were a kid and you were learning all these things, you weren't going to books or video or YouTube like old kids do now, and like to go and learn something, right? Um, you were just learning, teaching yourself.
Yeah, I think at the time the best resource was a little clip in the newspaper on a Sunday. A little photograph of something, maybe an art fair somewhere or an exhibition somewhere, and you would have this pixelated little photo, which I would cut and paste them in my files as inspiration mood boards, and then spend my entire life trying to figure it out.
So actually, that leads me to my next question is I'm wondering where your inspiration came from, because it sounds like you were very different from the rest of your family and perhaps even everyone else in the village in which you grew up. Tell us a little bit about that and sort of where the inspiration came from.
I think somehow uh, I didn't connect with a lot of people. Not at a very, I think, at an emotional level necessarily. Like my grandmother was the closest person to me. Mm, I felt like I wanted to learn a lot, and nobody else around me thought that was necessary, and almost like consciously unconsciously will impede in the process. Like I would almost have to hide to make art because my father won't be very happy about it. Even though I was performing well at school, but he thought I could study for the next grade instead of making art. So I think that almost also fostered this kind of rebel without knowing it. The drive was so strong I could have not suppressed it. So I think the inspiration was probably this insane amount of drive that I could not contain, but to spend it on experimentation and creation.
Wow. So what have you what have you come to understand about that and about yourself over the years from going through all of this?
I feel like the ability to connect seemingly disconnected things is a skill that I had all my life. I am now only embracing it. And when I went to architecture school, I would not be shy to experiment with the materials that people thought were crazy. Like I would think that you can crush the brick and make something else out of it again. Anyway, things like that. So I think the ability to be able to be so curious that you would not be that I'm not afraid of making mistakes because I'm insanely curious and I really believe in that. So it's not even me trying to be bold. I feel like that is there, and it is so strong that I almost have to be a service to it.
Okay, so you're in service of that gift, essentially.
Yeah, right. And
I mean,
it is like the brain just keeps working. I sketchbooks over sketchbooks that I need to get to at some point. Like it
right.
works faster than I can contain it, and so I just try to run with it as much as I can.
So what was your experience of education then? Tell, did you find that education limited you or did it help you?
I now looking back, I mean, I was always a good performing student. I mean, almost in the top grades, even at Parsons. But I think that was only because I am good at something that I want to do. And when it was education, I thought, oh, well, if I've taken it up, I have to do it. And because I know I can figure it out, it also is another pressure on me when I'm not doing it. And I don't like when I feel like I'm slacking or I'm not performing. So I think if I had more confidence in my abilities as a creative person, I would have probably done my education differently. But at the time, I think I succumbed a lot to that. And during my architecture, which was 4 to 5 years, I took an extra break because I could not do it anymore. The way I wanted to do it was kind of made fun of, like this is crazy person who's trying to just make this bigger than necessary things of the design projects. But I personally thought that is the only way I wanted to do it. And if you wanted to contain me, there were no instructions, but you just wanted it to be less, and that did not help me. So instead, I spent more time at the library, getting only 30% attendance, and becoming from this good student to, like, a person who's not attending the classes. But at the same time, I'm not wasting time. I'm not going to the movies. I'm not partying. I am going to the library, or I'm staying at my dorm and making models.
Wow. Did you have a vision for your life? Did you all this time as you were skipping school and going to the library and clearly following your own path?
Absolutely.
Did
I
you
think,
have a vision for your life?
yes. I mean, I have numerous visions, and I think the way my brain works, it doesn't work in a converging way, it works in a diverging way. So if I see a problem, I see 1,000 ways of solving it instead of like 1,000 problems and one solution. So in that, also I see life, I think, more one aspect of his curiosity, one aspect of my brain is the converging the disconnected things, and then
Yeah.
the third aspect of itself is that I think it sees things more vivid than they are. That is why also I find myself being sometimes engaged in perfection, because I see the tones, undertones. I see it. So when you see it, you can't ignore it. But if you don't see it, you can stop at that. Like, it's almost like some aspect of my brain are microscopic. Like, they can see
Okay.
three layers within a material. And then also, to answer your questions, I see life like that. So it's not simple, a linear plan. It's like layers and layers of dreams on that.
So that uh, I know because I've spent time with you. We're friends and we've spent quite a bit of time together, and I know that is part of what makes you so perceptive. Uh,
Say that again, last part.
I know that is what makes you so perceptive.
I see.
Like you pick up on people, situations, moods. You kind of pick up on things that other people don't necessarily pick up on right away. You're noticing details and nuances that I think other people don't necessarily notice. And it seems like you've always been that way.
Yeah, I think one, because I was hiding to make art, I think it also makes you more alert. And second, that was my gift. Like, this is why it was difficult for me to connect, but also to connect very strongly. Like, things almost have to feel. It's very difficult for me to do things for doing so. Like, there, if there is a connect and if there is a certain wavelength, it almost pulls me. So this is why I think the friends I have, the relationships I have, the work that I do has a deeper meaning for me. And maybe the art of life for me is that, like, feeling
Yeah.
doing it.
Let's just take a quick look at just some of the work. Tory Birch noticed you.
Right.
How did tell us how you came to work with Tory Birch because you did a beautiful thing for her, which we'll show everybody. But tell us about that.
So as mentioned earlier in this story, I had dropped out of Parsons. I had no tools, no resources, no money, but glue and paper and scissors that I could work with in my that little makeshift studio and bedroom. So I made, like, a bunch of small little things, and I posted them on on my Instagram. I have to say though, like, there has been a very strong presence of a mentor like person, Stephen Earle, in my life. So during I met him through Parsons during that time, but he saw that I was some sort of crazy, but not really crazy. So he's like, so why am I saying that? Because he also kind of exposed me to the world of flowers in New York. Like, he took me to a show at the Met, which was about flowers on the dresses, and I just very plainly said that I used to make these as a child, and in India, or where I was growing up, we did not value them so much. We just threw them away. And he then told me what a world of flowers it is. So that is also why I wanted to make it, to show him what I was doing as a child with paper and stuff. So when I made a few of those, I put it on Instagram. The New York Times found me from there, and then also a designer from Tory Burch's team found me, and then they brought me to their office, and we did a bunch of presentations, and
Let's
I
take
met.
a look. Let's take a look at it. I'd love to see uh, the images from the show. Here we go. Wow.
So that is the white dress with more than 300 little handmade daisies, like little chamomile size daisy flowers. I mean, it is on my Instagram, and probably you can find it on the internet as well if you were interested to see the details.
So Instagram is Sourabh Gupta Design. Is that right?
Yeah, Sourabh underscore Gupta underscore design. But if you type Sourabh Gupta, it will show up.
And your website, just for people,
Just
so
as
people
Sourabh
know,
Gupta design, same as the
Sourabh
Instagram.
Gupta
Sourabh
Design.
Gupta design, just when you how you see it.
And so your Instagram focuses very much on the flowers and the plants that you create.
Right now, yeah. I mean, that is what I'm invested in at the moment. There is so much that I want to do in that world, and then eventually connect it to other things, other interests of mine, and other passions.
Tell us, can you just put that back for a second? So I'd love to see. Tell us about that cloud that we were just looking at.
So there happens an annually a show called DIFA. It's Design Industry Foundation
Yep.
for, I think, our aid.
Design, design industry, fashion fighting aids. That's something like that.
The
Yes.
Foundation for Fighting AIDS. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they do this annual thing, and uh, I was one time invited to do a booth as well with a company called Walker Ridge, and so we had bought everything else, but we had no light. So 3 days before the show, they're like, "Okay, we want something, but we can't afford it." So paper and glue and scissors came to the rescue while I was making the flowers because those are the only materials I had, and this light birthed out of that. The event itself for the Architectural Digest, TIFA, and the material supplies that I had at the time available to me.
Wow. It's
Yeah,
beautiful.
thank you.
So there's a light inside. Is there a light inside that?
Yeah, yeah, it was sold for the auction in that show. I mean, I have a little prototype at the studio somewhere here, which still works fine. It's paper, but it's treated paper, so it's hard. I mean, it's a shell. You know,
Okay.
it's a form. The form is settled. It's not wavery or flaky like paper.
Wow. So where are you headed, Saurabh? Like what is your goal?
I think it's always for I think some people it's not necessarily the right question. What is your goal? I think there is a not an ultimate goal. There is goal and then becomes the goals and the next goal. In my case, I think giving and expressing and learning what I know and see it form in the three dimension and then it connecting to the next thing is how I live my life. But I think the if to define the abstract goal is to do something that I feel like is giving me satisfaction, but also is hinged upon the social impact that I want to create by supporting people, like with my art, like artisans in India and other places, but like something to create businesses that then support the society, and I get to enjoy the process of building it, but then somebody else is also able to enjoy the process of the fruit that comes out of it.
I love that. I love that. So you really want to create impact in the world and
Yeah,
be of
absolutely. I mean,
service
that
with
is
your work.
what I was driven even as a child. So if I could make that at church, at an event, that's what I did. If I could do that at school by bringing people together for a certain cause, like supporting people in the community. So that was always my path. I think that is at the core of everything. Even when I make art, is not to make for myself, but to make it so that a conversation can start, so that I can talk to other people who want to talk about it or want to see it, and that's how I connect with people.
So when you're creating something, are you thinking of a specific audience? Is there a specific group that you're trying to talk to?
I think the answer is yes, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes the idea itself is so pure that you don't need that.
Right.
The other times you're trying to build something when you have a half idea, then the audience plays that half role. but sometimes the idea is so complete by itself that the audience will always find it later.
Right. So when you were how early was it? How young were you when you started to create in this way?
Ever since, I mean, the first memory of my school day is to drawing the picture of the blackboard in my English four line ruled book, the notebook.
Yeah.
So the first day I'm at school and I'm drawing the blackboard on my notebook, and the teacher sees it and takes me to the principal, and I get a set of notebooks in the next day in the assembly as a prize. So I don't know, because I was doing it, that was enough, or was it good? That was what inspired them to think that they want to present me with a present. Who cares? But the point is that I was doing it from the first day when I had pencil and a paper at school.
And you were how old at that point?
I have a memory of getting the present, but my mother tells me, this is my first day at school. So, that is also another thing in my brain is like I don't forget things very easily. I
Right.
would remember most details in an event at the time and the people. I remember names, all of those things. So I think that's the functioning of the brain that then allows me also to connect things.
Hmm. You mentioned earlier that you were the crazy one, the who sort of was, as we would say where I'm from, too big for his boots, right? Sort of doing things that were outside of what would uh, be expected.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you got pushback, resistance, made fun of, etc. Did that affect you?
It does. There is nobody who would say it doesn't affect them. You can choose how does it affect you later on, but when it affects you, there is no control. You later on then figure out when you feel it, okay, what to do with it. I mean, even at Parsons not too long ago, 2 years ago, I mean, I had classmates who were just upset because my presentation was large, uh, like it was models of 20 different kinds. And at the time, I did think that I was not doing it correctly, but now at this point it's like we have to allow students to learn their process. In my case, if editing was missing, but maybe I have not reached that stage of editing, I'm still creating the ideas, and my brain works in that way that you have to first understand, is this the right way for me to experiment and learn? So in
Right.
that process, instead I made friends upset because they thought I was just trying to be, again, this big thing, which was not my intention necessarily, but it was intention to understand and seek the answer to the problem that I was solving.
I mean, it sounds like it's more about them than you. Hmm.
But at the time, you see, I mean, I'm new to this country. I am confident, fairly confident, but there is still a support system that one needs to
Yeah.
check that confidence. Confidence doesn't exist in vacuum. It still
Right.
is the reception of certain kind. So I was necessarily not feeling the best of myself. And when other students who are equally good or even better, when they have an opinion, sometimes it can get to you.
Yeah. So when as you were creating at a younger age, really from scarcity, and I want to talk more about sort of the scarcity and the abundance, because one of the things that you have said about your work is that you began out of scarcity and now you do it because of abundance. And I have to dive into that with
Yes,
Ben,
yes.
because it's just such a brilliant statement, and I'm so interested in how that has changed your process and your work and sort of inspired you, because essentially you're saying now I'm like a kid in a candy store.
Yeah. So I
Right.
tell you, right, how as a child, I was using spoon in 20 different ways as a tool because there was no other tool available.
Right.
But as after coming to New York, there is a needle for every stitch you want to do. For one stitch and 20 stitches, there's 20 needles for that. So when I went to Parsons, one great thing that was there that I learned is like it's also a school that where more well-to-do people come. So when they cut a little piece of a mount board and they don't need it anymore, it's a waste. And for me, that's the gold, because one, it's a beautiful, it's a fine material. Second is like, finding something allows me to experiment and do something very quickly, because there is that kind of confidence as well. Like, well, if it doesn't work, it's fine. But if you buy something specifically and it's expensive, you usually are a bit more cautious.
Yeah.
So scarcity part was that, like, when you had no supplies, how do you make toothpaste work as a white background for your watercolor drawings, which did not work, by the way. But when you come here and you have this abundance of supplies, then you start understanding, like, you don't buy more, you try to learn from what it is, the materials you have. And that is also what allowed me to just try to, I did all my projects at Parsons from the materials I found at the back of the studio, dispelled by the other students. And that first thing started because I thought, oh wow, I can't buy the materials, I came here on a scholarship, not much thing to afford the expensive materials. But then later on, I just saw I can actually solve all my projects with this. So it almost became a fun challenge for me to use what I had as my basis of experimenting. So all the
Wow.
projects I did at Parsons then became about using what you have as the first go to solve the problem.
Have you ever thought about teaching, Saurabh?
No, I have been approached by RISD, Rhode Island School of Design, to give a lecture, which I did, and then they said if I wanted to come teach in their department, I'm welcome. I think I just couldn't get to that place where I thought that was an option.
Well, teaching takes up a lot of time, and you've got a lot of creation to do, it seems. I know you're very busy. Tell us about what's going on right now with you, work-wise.
So today I'm working on another piece that will be at the Met for Oscar's team, Oscar de la Renta. Second, I'm working on this.
Hang on. Well, hold, stop. You can't just say that and move on. Oscar de la Renta. Tell us about, if you could tell us about this, tell us about it. If
I
not,
don't
we'll
think
move
I
on.
can, because it's 3 days away, and I don't even know what rights I have. I
Okay,
know
so
that
we
I'm
won't
working
say
them, so
anymore.
that's a
But
fact. So that's what it is. Not that they have told me to not say anything. I just don't know what my place is in the process. So I
okay.
stay away. And but a funny story there is that when I first did Tory Burch's flowers for the Met Gala, I had zero clue what a Met Gala is. So I'm just working as if it were like a street vendor project for me. I'm finishing it, I'm delivering it, and then when that happens, my friends are telling me that, oh, your work is there. And I said, okay. But then I started to understand what the gravity of a Met Gala is in this context, because I was also fairly new, but also not from the world of fashion. I did not know much about it
Right.
anyway. So now when I'm doing it, it feels a little bit different, but still, like, it will move. We will move on from there. Next thing,
Yeah.
and the larger installation I'm doing at the Hudson Yards, which will be covering the whole ceiling of a luxury design building that's coming up in next year.
So tell us about that.
So I think the concept is still in the process. Um I just know that I'll be working alongside with five other artists from Pace Gallery, which I think is supposed to be a great gallery in America or in the world
Yeah.
as well. I am trying to work with other artists from there and building something which I think I will have more information on in the coming weeks. Yeah.
Right. So
But other
you're
than that,
busy.
yeah, but that's also not necessarily because, but that's my nature. That's because I have told you I have piled up sketchbooks that I want to get to one day. So
Hmm.
if I have finished everything else today, I still have more to do.
Yes, and I've a feeling that you're going to be very busy for a very long time.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm happily busy. I mean, I'm learning a lot. So
yeah,
that's the best part in this.
and it seems that you seem to be happy to just go with the flow, but with in an intentional way.
Yeah, I mean, there is a framework of what I believe and what I want to create in the world, like what presence, why am I here? So when I'm doing something, and if I can make that connection, that is a fun project to do. And in many cases, when I don't know if it whether connects with the values that I have, like be it be social impact, be it be creating opportunities of business, then in that case, I'll treat it as a skill development project. So in most cases, right now, I think I am luckily engaged with projects that are building both the social impact that I want to create, the opportunities that I want to build, and just being at my place myself where I know more about the world to contribute more.
And it seems like you're really driven by projects that will help you learn something yourself as you do it.
Yeah, I mean, I have ample opportunities where I could repeat what I'm creating and supply to all the stores. And while that might be okay, but in my case, I think there is more that I can do, and since I can, I will.
I can't wait to see what you do next. We've
Amazing.
we've covered this much of what we could possibly talk about. So, will you come back?
Oh, I think it'll be. I told you in the conversation, the reason I make art is to connect with people, and if I can do that without doing making art, but just talking, I would love that. So,
Well, your work is beautiful. It inspires all of us. Everybody make sure that you follow Sourabh on his Instagram.
Sourabh
Uh,
underscore Gupta underscore design, or just type Sourabh Gupta design, it should show up.
there you go. And you can find him on his website.
Yeah.
Make sure you watch that red carpet at the Met Gala and you
Yes.
check out his work.
Yeah.
Sourabh, thank you so much for
Aaron,
joining me
one
today.
of the highlights of my coming to New York is you connecting with you. And
Oh,
I mean, you found me not in a very stable place, but I think I have come to that place where I'm proud of myself as well.
good. I'm really happy to hear that. I'm really happy you're in the world.
Thank you.
And I can't wait for another conversation with you, hopefully soon. Thank you for joining us. We're out of time. I'll see
Pleasure.
you
Thank
very
you for
soon.
inviting me. And all the guys watching, have a wonderful day. This has been a fun talk.
Thank you, Saurabh. Okay, everybody, that's it. We're out of time. Make sure, did you not love him? Isn't he just wonderful? I'm so happy he's in the world. Thank you for joining WYDAF. You can find us at Wisdom You Didn't Ask For across all the platforms, or just hashtag WYDAF, put it in, and you'll get all the notifications of new shows, new guests, just as brilliant as Saurabh. And I will see you next week.